Cali X Boxing in the building on Hump Day. Boxing fans speaking to other boxing fans, hello out there, about how we can further our agenda as boxing fans. This is a no fanager zone. You have entered a no fanager zone. But Canelos, you're going to talk about Canelo and you're going to slurp up Canelo like you always do. No, that's not what we do here. We're not fanagers. We're not trying to manage any fighter's career. We don't roll out of bed one day and decide to be fans of certain fighters. We become fans of actions of fighters, which is why we big up Canelo a lot on this channel and other fighters who behave that way. Give us the fights, build organic fan bases, stay true to your organic fan bases by staying true to yourself over time, and you continue to grow your base. And that's what a guy like Canelo is doing, and that's why we'll talk about that again on this channel today. What's up, Wheelchair Man John? Y'all make sure to hit that like button and make sure to hit those alerts too. From what I'm seeing in the analytics, guys just aren't getting the alerts out there. People just aren't getting the alerts. People are seeing that the show is live like a half hour in and then typing in the name and then going back, because I get a ton of playbacks, going back and playing it back, and people just aren't getting the alerts. So make sure to hit those alerts, and hopefully YouTube sends them out. BBL Oscar will give Berlanga all the bubble wrap he needs. That or feed him to Munguia. That's the thing. And we'll be talking about that. OJ22 in the building as well. Y'all make sure to leave those comments, because I'm going to be locked in on the comments in particular today. A lot of times I get in my train of thoughts and just start going and vibing, and I neglect the comments. We're not going to do that today. We're going to be hitting on the comments today, making sure to highlight the comments. So make sure to leave those comments and hit that like button. And by the way, HCP will be back on this channel at 12 p.m. Central, or 12 Central, noon Central tomorrow. So make sure I will send out the alert tonight. Make sure to hit that alert so you're locked in for HCP tomorrow at noon with D-Style Boxing. We'll be talking about the fights coming up this weekend. Navarrete is back. Serrano is back. So we got some good fights coming up this weekend, and we'll be talking betting odds, etc., etc., etc. But let's just start it off with Berlanga. Berlanga's a hot commodity. Why is Berlanga a hot commodity all of a sudden? Berlanga bit a guy's neck in the past fight, got suspended by the New York State Athletic Commission, hasn't been looking good the past few fights. Why is Berlanga a hot commodity all of a sudden? I have the answer. I'm throwing it out to the comment section. Why is Berlanga a hot commodity all of a sudden? We have a highly intelligent chat here. I want to hear answers. Why all of a sudden is Berlanga a hot commodity? He's a free agent. Top Rank dropped him. Top Rank dropped him. And all of a sudden, he's a hot commodity, free agent. Why is that? Matchroom wants to offer him things, and Golden Boy and BBL Oscar wants to offer him things. Why all of a sudden is he a hot commodity? He's a hot commodity because he's a vulnerable fighter. He hasn't looked good in the past few fights, but at the same time, his fan base is wider than he probably deserves based off of what he's done in the ring. This is it. Mr. T nails it as a possible sacrifice. He's a sacrificial lamb. He's a sacrificial lamb with a base. He's got a base. Puerto Rican. He's a Puerto Rican fighter. Shout out my guy, Two Matador. And like I said, I'm going to be on those comments today. We're going to be on those comments today. All right? Leave your comments. I'm right on them. He's a hot commodity because he's a sacrificial lamb with a name, with a built-in base. He's a Puerto Rican fighter. And what has happened in boxing? The Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry has pretty much disappeared. We still have some fights on the lower levels, Mexico versus Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico hasn't been on their game. We got Xander Zayas coming up. Gonzalez is a champion in the lower weight class. But other than that, Berlanga was supposed to be Puerto Rico's hope a couple years ago, right? He's knocking guys down, 100% KO percentage. But what happens? Top Rank does what Top Rank does. Top Rank did what Top Rank does. They offer resistance early on in the career to see where a guy is, to test him, to see, is this guy worth sending more assets towards? Should we be throwing money at him? Should we be spending money on his career? That's what they do with fighters. They provide proper resistance throughout the career. And when they started to provide resistance for Berlanga, what happened? He starts biting guys' necks. You know, even Fat Joe's in the ring. Like, Cotto is leaving early to go to the Hall of Fame before the Berlanga fight, which I talked to him about in September for the Vegas, and he kind of laughed about that. But also, Fat Joe is in the ring. Like, what is that? You know, I'm not attached to this. I'm not attached to this guy. He's not Terror Squad. He's not Terror Squad. So what happens is Top Rank is like, we got to drop this guy. You know, he's not really worth. And so they part ways amicably. So all of a sudden, he's a hot commodity. He's an asset. Why is he an asset? Because he's a sacrificial lamb with a name and a built-in base, because he's a Puerto Rican fighter, and Puerto Rican fighters with names all of a sudden they're a rare commodity. So that makes Berlanga a hot commodity. He's a beatable fighter for guys. Canelo would destroy him. Munguia would be in a fun fight with Berlanga and eventually get him out of there. That's what would happen. Or Berlanga would last 12 rounds with Munguia, provide resistance and a great fight, a possible fight of the year candidate, but Munguia will win the fight. Oscar knows this. Trust Fund Eddie knows this. Right? Food for the dogs. That's what he is. A fan base matters. Berlanga is crap. He should fight crappy Munguia. And that's the thing with Munguia. Shout out my guy, D-Style Boxing. Will be live here tomorrow at noon HCP. I'll send out the alert tonight. Munguia is a fun fighter. He's being, in my opinion, marketed incorrectly. He should be marketed as a fun fighter, entertaining fighter. Doesn't matter how many times he loses, he'll still pack the arena. That's how Munguia should be marketed. But Munguia instead being marketed by Golden Boy as a fighter, a possible pound-for-pound level fighter, possible top guy in a weight class type fighter. And I don't think he's there. I don't think he's that guy. I think his ceiling is lower than that, but it doesn't matter. As we say on this channel, as long as guys are testing themselves and providing value in other ways, entertainment value, Munguia, it's fun. And if Munguia loses his next fight, guess who's still going to show up in his next fight? Me. If he loses the one after that, me. Loses the one after that, me. He's a fun fighter. He's vulnerable early. He'll give up rounds to guys like Jimmy Kelly early in the fight and then knock him out. It's fun watching that tightrope balance that Munguia provides, right? He's a guy, he's vulnerable. He's not a great boxer, but he will test your chin. But he will pressure fight you to death. And that's what people tune in for. So it hurts my heart when I see people say Munguia is crap, but when we follow his career, I understand why. I see why he's saying that. They're obviously, I like that they're keeping him busy, but they're obviously protecting him for some reason. And I'm saying, take the bubble wrap off. Let the guy fly. Let Munguia be Munguia. Let Munguia get in there and be in fights 3 to 4 times per year. And let's have some fun. And that's the value that this guy provides. Let him provide that value for the fan base. Let Munguia fly. But Munguia versus Berlanga is a fun fight. And that's the type of value that Berlanga provides to Golden Boy. It could be Mexico versus Puerto Rico. You can put that fight in New York. You can put that fight on the West Coast. And it provides that value. We need Mexico versus Puerto Rico back at the top level. We do. That rivalry is important for boxing. We need it back. Puerto Rico, what are you doing? Dominican fighters are now outpacing Puerto Rican fighters. Puerto Rico, that island down there, get it together. Start providing value at the top. We need Mexico versus Puerto Rico back. We need it back. Xander Zayas can come up, but Berlanga, that's the value that Berlanga provides. He's got a nice built-in fan base. He's Puerto Rican, and he's a sacrificial lamb. Munguia beats him. Oscar knows that. Oscar knows he can give him 1 or 2 easy fights, and then bam, Munguia fight. Cash him out. And Trust Fund Eddie knows the same thing. I'm reading this Trust Fund Eddie interview yesterday with the Zone Boxing Show, and there were a couple things in there that really piqued my interest. Made my ears perk up. And one of them was Berlanga is a possibility for Canelo next year. And what it is sacrificial lamb. Once again, Give Berlanga 1 or 2 easy fights on the zone, and then Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Try to make them look good. It may be impossible, but Mexico versus Puerto Rico is back in 2024. Canelo can go to Madison Square Garden or wherever, and we can do a Mexican versus Puerto Rican showdown between Berlanga, an undefeated fighter coming off of some decent wins, against Canelo. Mexico versus Puerto Rico. So that's the value that Berlanga provides to guys like Trust Fund Eddie and Golden Boy. And Top Rank may not see that value, and Top Rank doesn't have the asset or in and around the weight class like a Munguia, like a Canelo. So they just don't see value in him right now, but he has value in other avenues with other people. Saludos to my guy Jesus M. Still no frame. There'll never be a frame. I refuse to put a frame on that poster. Oscar says the end are real. They just assisted him. The abs are real. Munguia should fight Liam Smith. Good test for him. I like that fight. Salute to my guy Nando in the building, always rolling through. I appreciate your support, Nando. Jaime is bubble wrapped. That he is. Wait, you can't show up after a fighter loses, because he was exposed. What's wrong with you? And that's my thing. Exposed. Could you imagine if these guys fought in the Twitter era? No frame here. Do you imagine if these guys fought in the Twitter era? Oh my God, did you see Duran get knocked out by Hearn? Oh, what a bum. That guy is a bum. I knew it all along. Exposed. Knocked out. Great fighters don't get knocked out. Great fighters don't lose. Great fighters especially don't get knocked out. Get them out of here, bum. I saw guys doing mythical polls on Twitter yesterday. Duran versus Tank Davis, mythical matchup at 135. Can you imagine the gall of some of these new age boxing fans? Tank Davis versus Duran. How do you see that fight playing out? How do you see Duran versus Tank playing out? Oh, how do you see that playing out? How do you think that plays out? Duran eats them like fish food. That's how that plays out. Puerto Ricans blame that music, reggaeton, for the demise of their fighter. I'm serious. Daddy Yankee. Let's not forget that if it wasn't for PBC Showtime A-side crap, we would have got Jamal versus Munguia last July. And that is correct. And that's an important point. Before I go into that point, let me continue to piggyback off of this. I mean, could you imagine Twitter after Hagler Hearns? Great fight, but Hearns was knocked out, bum. Great fighters don't get hit that much. Why would you get hit that much? It's about hit and don't get hit. It's about hit and don't get hit. Why would you get hit? Great fighters don't get hit. We talked about it the other day. Virgil Ortiz is a bum. Like Virgil Ortiz, he gets hit too much. He's very flawed. Fighters get hit. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they put on gloves and they punch each other. And every once in a while, you're going to get punched. And even great fighters got punched a lot. Tommy Hearns, bum. He got hit too much against Hagler. He got knocked out. Bum. Hagler lost to Ray Leonard. Great fighters don't lose. Bum. That would be the Twitter era and the Four Kings era. But this right here, Showtime, Paramount is going to Paramount Plus with Showtime. That's what it's going to be called. And they may phase out boxing and Showtime, and it may be starting already. Every single fight announcement from Showtime, the big ones, pay-per-view. Plant versus Benavidez, pay-per-view. Why is that pay-per-view? Why would Plant versus Benavidez be pay-per-view? Back in the day, like Plant versus Benavidez, HBO Championship Boxing, Showtime Championship Boxing, you wouldn't put Plant versus Benavidez behind a paywall. Is Plant or Benavidez, like, are they superstar fighters? Let's be honest with ourselves. Why don't we have American stars? We don't have American stars, fellas. We got Canelo coming out of Mexico. We got Anthony Joshua coming out of the UK. We don't have American stars, and nobody is sounding that alarm that, hey, we don't have an American boxing star for the first time in history. Why is that? Why, for the first time, do we not have an American boxing star for the first time in history? Why? It could possibly be because we're building a country club sport here and we're pricing people out. That could be a possibility. It could also be that the fighters are too inactive. They're not building organic fan bases. Could also be that. But Showtime has a lot to do with this because they're putting everything behind an added paywall now. How do you expect to build the star? Boots Ennis is a perfect example of this. Boots Ennis is a guy who should be, according to old standards in boxing, should be a guy we should be grooming as a possible superstar in boxing. But what's happening instead? This guy is 6-7 years into his career, never headlined a card. How is that possible? They're telling me this is the greatest pound for pound talent since Roy Jones, the greatest pure welterweight we've seen since Sugar Ray Leonard. Why doesn't anybody know him then? Why? And the answer is they're doing a dismal job of building this guy's career. Dismal. Mythically, he wins every fight, right? Mythically, he wins every fight. Boots beats everybody. Nobody knows him. So it doesn't really, like if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and nobody's there, did it fall? That whole thing. Boots is so great, but nobody knows him. Why does it matter? That's where we're at. They're not building stars. So Plant versus Benavidez, Showtime, pay-per-view. Tank versus Ryan, Showtime, pay-per-view. Pay-per-view. Arrow versus Yoga McKee for no belts at 154, pay-per-view. Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz for the heavyweight non-championship, pay-per-view. They're all pay-per-view. What did Deontay Wilder's pay-per-view numbers look like last fight? They don't officially release them, right? What were they? Not good. They were not good. They finna serve Berlanga like a fish dinner. So Berlanga might retire before age 30 and get big fights. That's what it looks like to me. Salute my guy D Nice. The Berlin Wall about to fall again. PBC Showtime going to get this owned by Paramount Plus, and that's a possibility. I'm closely watching and monitoring that situation. But when I see numbers, like when I see them come out and say the ratings have to be 10% of our overall subscriber base, that's what they're saying for us to keep a program. So when that's not happening with Showtime, when a guy like Tank Davis does 124,000 peak viewers, 124,000 peak. I don't know what the pay-per-view numbers are, but I know that they officially announced that 124,000 is what the replay did for the Garcia fight. That's not anywhere close to 10%. So when I see stuff like that, and Tank is supposed to be their biggest asset over at Showtime, how do we keep that thing going? How do we keep that moving? And it's not surprising to me that Showtime is being very aggressive at the beginning of the year, like they were last year, 2022. This is mirroring last year. Showtime came out, PBC came out, announced a bunch of fights that everybody was excited about. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited about some of them as well. But there was a growing number of fights that were on pay-per-view last year, provided to us by Showtime. And on top of that, what happened in the fourth quarter? Everything dried up. The well dried up. It dried up. No fights being announced. The biggest pure fight that could be made in boxing. And PBC couldn't offer either fighter guaranteed money for the fight. So what happens now? We go into 2023 and it seems to be mirroring that, except every single fight with names on it provided to us by Showtime is now being put behind a pay-per-view paywall. And on top of that, they're being aggressive. And it's like I said in the fourth quarter last year, you PBC fighters, Showtime fighters, get your dates early. Get them early. Make sure to be aggressive. Get your fights early. Try to get a couple fights in. Tank, January, April. Get your fights in. Try to get your fights in before things start drying up in the budget once again. But I'm not Nostradamus over here. I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't know what's going to happen with Showtime. I'm not going to pretend to know. All I know is the direction we're headed in with Showtime is not a good direction when everything is being put behind pay-per-view. Showtime Championship Boxing is pretty much falling by the wayside. We still got ShowBox because those are pretty cheap. But are they going to keep this around? What happens to PBC after that? I don't know. Plant vs. Benavidez on HBO Dark. The abs are real. Fox transitioned away from PBC last year, all pay-per-views as well. And I think Fox is done with PBC. So at some point, we got to take score, right? We got to look at the scoreboard. So what do we have with PBC? What we have with PBC since Al Haymon rolled it out, and it was supposed to be free boxing for all. Boxing back on network TV. And back on old YTBC, this is what I was told constantly. If we get boxing back on network TV, everything's going to be great again. The sport's going to grow in America. Everything's going to be great. And Al Haymon is the triumphant savior that will bring that to us. Free boxing for all. Network TV. Al Michaels calling fights. We're back on CBS. We're on NBC. We're on Fox. We're on ABC. What happens? They burn through money, burn through money, burn through money. What happens? The fighters get more inactive. What happens? More mismatches. And as time goes on and the money starts to dry up, the mismatches get even further because the B-sides have to be cheap. Look at Tank Davis's career. What happens? Free boxing for all goes away. Those free boxing for all t-shirts were sent to Africa for the poor kids. Free boxing for all, free boxing for all. Free boxing for all is done. There is no more free boxing for all. It's a country club sport now. So what happened, it looks like to me, is Trojan horse. Purge rosters, promise the world, promise I'll give you everything. Life will be so easy for you as a fighter. I'm going to provide everything for you. Make the route easier at the same time. Promise the world to the fans. And I'm supposed to be sitting here as a boxing fan and not be disturbed by that. I'm supposed to be sitting here as a boxing fan who was promised free boxing for all, was promised that I'd be getting fights on CBS, NBC, that there would be no sanctioning bodies getting in the way. We would have our own PBC belt. I'm promised the world, and then none of it is delivered, and I'm supposed to be sitting over here happy. Anthony Yard got my viewership on the strong of his performance. I'll take someone who tries and loses over undefeated Cook who takes no risk. And that's what we're about here. This is a no Fanager zone. We're not going to be over here saying, oh, Yard, he actually shouldn't have fought Better Beef. He actually should not have fought Kovalev. He should not have taken the risks. He should not have. He should have just, fought some easy fights, fight some guys on the fringe, top 10, built his name. He's a marketable guy. He should have taken the easy route, stayed undefeated. He shouldn't have fought Better Beef. What a dummy. What a dummy. And what a fraud. He lost to Better Beef. He lost to Eurobums. He lost to Eurobums, Better Beef, and Kovalev. We don't do that over here. This is a no Fanager zone. No Fanager zone. On the days of Julian Jackson, Terry Norris, Boom Boom Mancini on ABC Worldwide of Sports on Sundays. And I remember clearly going to my uncle's house, being at my uncle's house and watching Marco Antonio Barrera, the babyface assassin, on ABC Wide World of Sports on a Saturday afternoon. I remember it clearly, as clear as day. But why can't we have that anymore? People just thought that we could put boxing back on network TV and everything would be fine. The ratings would be great. Boxing would be built up to where it was back in the 80s, 90s. Why did that not happen? Why did it not happen? One of my theories would be that the guy trying to provide this blueprint the past decade, putting it back on network TV, free boxing for all, the blueprint wasn't going to be allowed to be successful because this model that we have, this part-time boxing model, this take the easy road model, does not provide stars. And for people to be interested, people say what they want about, oh, just give people good fights, just give people entertaining fights and they'll be in the boxing. No. Even after great fights comes confusion. to the casual boxing fan, and that's because they don't know what to do with all the belts. They don't know how to be educated on this stuff. And on top of that, they want to be invested in people. They want to be invested in stars. You need stars. And that's why female boxing is starting to take off. It's because it looks more like a sport. And it looks more like a sport because all of a sudden we have rivalries, and we have rivals fighting each other. And because we have rivals fighting each other, more people are emotionally invested in these fighters. They're building organic fan bases, and they're starting to take off. What's the problem? What the problem is with men's boxing, especially over the past decade, and why the free boxing for all thing did not work and the ratings didn't take off, and we actually started to lose viewership in boxing here in America, is because people started to see this and they're like, wait a second. It's already confusing for me, but I don't know who this guy is. I don't know. Like, you're telling me Boots Ennis is a great fighter, but I don't know who he is. I don't know who that guy is. And why do I not know who this guy is 7 years into his career if he's so great? You're telling me this guy is the greatest thing since Roy Jones, pound for pound, the greatest pure welterweight we've seen since Sugar Ray Leonard. But why don't I know him? And then I see him fight, and he fights a guy named Karen, and it's not an interesting fight. And by the way, he's on an undercard. Why am I intrigued by this? We built stars before. It's not just about where you put fights. It's about what you're putting on. Why am I emotionally invested in a guy who only cares to come around once per year? Why am I emotionally invested in a guy who, when he does come around, he's giving me half-ass performances against guys I've never heard of? Why am I emotionally invested in a guy who doesn't care enough about me as a fan to put his belts on the line to fight as mandatory? Like, it's a crazy idea, right? Like, you greased palms in order to get a guy to the top of the mandatory list, number one contender. You greased people's palms, didn't do anything to deserve it. He gets the mandatory, and then you announce the fight, and it's not even for the belts. Why am I emotionally invested in that? Why am I emotionally invested in a book that isn't going anywhere? I'm going to put that book down. I'm going to put the book down. Chapter after chapter. Wait, I just read that chapter. I just read it. This is literally the same chapter. Chapter 8 is the same as chapter 7. Chapter 9 is the same as chapter 7 and 8. Why am I invested in this? I want to put the book down. I know when I watch the NFL, it's headed to the Super Bowl. I know when I watch March Madness, it's headed to Final Four and National Championship. I know when I watch Major League Baseball, it's headed to the World Series. Where is this headed? The more I watch PBC over the past decade, where is this headed? Where is it going? Why aren't the top welterweights fighting each other? Why did it take this dude so long to accumulate 3 belts as talented as he is? And why in the hell is he not fighting to accumulate the 4th belt? Why in the hell, for an undisputed fight for one of the sexiest divisions in boxing, one of the most talented divisions in boxing, does either fighter not get guaranteed money? It doesn't make any sense. It does not add up. So I'm watching this play out year after year after year. This is not headed anywhere. As a boxing fan, I'm getting bored, so I can see why casual fans aren't interested in this. Stephen Fulton versus Inoue never would have happened 2 years ago. That's right. And I think things are starting to happen. Fighters are starting to see things. Fighters want to speak out more. Fighters want to take control of their careers more. Whereas PBC 4 or 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, fighters would have been happy just sitting back and saying, let me let Al take care of things. I spoke out about this last year when Caleb Plant beats Truax. He looks average. And then after the fight, they ask him about Canelo, and this is his chance to call out Canelo after the win. And what does he say? I got to talk to Al Haymon. And this is another thing intriguing about the PBC fighters is they're never asked to cross the street. Never. Even when it was Canelo versus Caleb Plant, Canelo had to go over there to make the fight. Canelo had to go to Showtime. Canelo had to deal with Al. Canelo wasn't allowed to stay. He wasn't afforded, even as the A-side fighter, to stay working with Trust Fund Eddie. He wasn't allowed to stay on DAZN. We had to go back to pay-per-view to pay for that fight because that was going to be a free fight on DAZN. It's what we got. It's what we got. Riddick Bowe and Rafael Roelis on Tuesday Night Fights. They priced us out for sure. PBC on OnlyFans or Fight TV. Shout out my guy Bruce Gas in the building. Always appreciate you coming through. Al Haymon, PBC, burn bridges at HBO, NBC, ESPN, CBS, and now possibly, well, Fox too. Add Fox to that, and now possibly Showtime. And that's the thing. Like if you have a girl and she's super attractive, and I know, like I've known girls like this, it's super attractive. Everything's going great with them. Career, and they hit 30 and they want to be married. They want to have kids, but they don't. And they can't put it together. Like every relationship has gone bad. And you're like, you have everything going for you. How is every relationship going bad? Maybe just possibly you should look in the mirror and say, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the common denominator here. Maybe if every relationship has gone bad with me in the past, I have everything going for myself. On the surface, everybody wants to deal with me. But if everything in the past has gone to crap, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the common denominator here. And that's the deal with PBC. It's like CBS, NBC, Fox, HBO, now possibly Showtime. What are we doing? What are we doing? Mr. T in the building. Marco Antonio Barrera even fought on regular CBS and Fox Sports Fight Night at the Forum Cards. And this is what we talked about in the past and why this current model does not work for building stars here in America. It's when James Toney was in between big fights, he was on USA Tuesday Night Fights. Oscar De La Hoya, I think that was after the Mayweather fight, fought Stevie Forbes on free HBO at the Home Depot Center out in Carson, California, the tennis courts. I remember that fight. He fought Stevie Forbes on regular HBO. Arturo Gotti, the same thing. These guys weren't pay-per-view every single fight. The revision is history there. They weren't pay-per-view every single fight. Why in the hell is Deontay Wilder on pay-per-view every single fight? And the answer to that question is the economic model that they built. They have to put these fighters on pay-per-view in order to make money. They would lose money otherwise. And I know that because I have Boxing's power brokers telling me that when I complain on Twitter. Directly telling me that. No, we don't put pay-per-views together just for stars. It's just, if the model doesn't fit, would you rather see your fighter on the shelf? Because it's one of the two. Watch them on pay-per-view or watch them on the shelf. How about neither? How about neither? And how about you built this model? You built it. And what it is the high minimums, they guarantee them. Exclusive to certain networks. So a James Toney wouldn't have been able to go to USA, wouldn't have been able to go to HBO. He wouldn't be able to wheel and deal. He didn't have that freedom. He was restricted. And these fighters are signing these deals early on, long-term contracts with certain networks, long-term contracts with certain promoters. And if the promoters are dealing with one network and the network's budget is drying up because these promoters are not building stars, this model is broken. It's broken. I've said it a million times. It's broken. Great fights make great fighters, not cherry picks. That is right. No Fanager zone here. No Fanager zone. And great fights, moments build fighters. Moments build fighters. And you can only fool the market for so long. Knocking a guy out, just a guy, doesn't work. You got to give us, we need resistance, right? We need something that resembles a real sport. Why is football so big? Because we were watching the Chiefs versus the Bengals the other night. Mahomes versus Joe Burrow, possibly the two best quarterbacks in the league. young, talented guys, marketable guys going at it. Everything on the line. Everything on the line. A dude playing on a busted ankle. So we're emotionally invested in that. We want to see who gets to the mountaintop. We want to see real resistance. We don't want to see guys pad their records to the top. You can't fool the market. You can't. They think that they can fool people. Look at Tank Davis's career, for example. They think that they can fool people, and they can only fool so many people. Great live gates the guy's doing, but we've had the boxing is littered with fighters who have done great live gates. That's not anything out of the ordinary. Boxing is littered with examples of the guys in the past who could sell out in Vegas, could sell out in New York, could sell out in Atlanta. That's nothing out of the ordinary. The pay-per-view numbers, are they 60,000? Are they 200,000? I don't know what they are, but either way, that's not a star. That's not a superstar. We do not have an American star. We don't. If we did, Showtime might not be in such a precarious position right now. Same thing with PBC. Boots is the you buy in the store. It looks promising, but when you open it up, it sucks. Boots is talented, but hasn't been developed or tested. Almost same age as Munguia, who's got the better resume by far. And this is what I'm saying. Like, I want to like Boots, and I have people telling me all the time, Boots is the guy. He's the guy. He beats everybody. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. How do I know? How do I know? I've had people tell me a million fighters are the guy. He's the next guy. He's the next guy. This is what's making it increasingly difficult to put out pound for pound lists, to properly educate casual fans as to who the great fighters are, because they're simply not tested. So we simply don't know. How do I tell casual fans? Like I could tell a casual fan, this guy's great, and then he fights a guy named Karen and I'm looking over at the casual fan, they're looking at me like, this is the guy? He's fighting a guy named Karen on an undercard, and he looks okay. You telling me this is the guy? We have a growing percentage of fights like that. You said this is the guy? This is the guy? And before I get to more comments, that's one of the things. There were two things from the Eddie Hearn interview yesterday with the Zone Boxing Show that really piqued my interest. One is Eddie is working with 2023. He's working with Eddie Reynoso, and he's working with Canelo on 2023 and 2024 plans. That's an important point. He's not only working with Canelo on this year, but next year as well. On top of that, another thing Eddie said is, my phone is busier than ever. It's ringing off the hook, and it's ringing off the hook because I have a growing number of fighters who are complaining to me about being inactive. Fighters are just tired of not being in the ring. They're getting bored. They're joining us like as boxing fans. I'd rather be on here talking about fights. I'd rather be on here talking about strategy. I'd rather be on here talking about, oh, this fighter's front foot against this fighter's front foot, southpaw versus conventional, boxer versus pressure fighter. I'd rather be talking about that. But how am I supposed to be talking about that if they're not giving me those fights? So when I see Eddie Hearn say that, my phone is busier than ever, it's ringing off the hook because fighters are looking to cross the street. He said that word per word. Fighters are looking to cross the street. They're not active. They're getting bored. They're getting bored with being out of the ring. Fighters fight. Fighters fight. And this is what I go back to all the time when I talk about fans behaving like fans. We've for whatever reason over the past decade, we've had a growing number of fans who want to talk about the business side of the sport rather than the sport. We have a growing number of fans who want to protect fighters, who do not want their fighters to be put at risk, their favorite fighters. And I'm asking, like, why would you be a fan of a fighter that you had to protect that way? Why? Because I spoke at the top about Jaime Munguia. I don't care if Jaime Munguia loses 3, 4, 5 straight fights. He'd be my favorite fighter, one of my favorite fighters. William Zepeda, same thing. It hurt my heart when Shakur Stevenson called out Zepeda, and Zepeda says Zepeda's team, because I don't doubt for a minute that Zepeda would take that fight, but Zepeda's team says, no, we're not going to go in that direction right now. Why not? Zepeda could lose 3, 4, 5 straight fights and still be one of the most exciting fighters in the sport and can still sell out arenas. Let the guy fly. Let the fighters fight. Fighters fight. Let them fight. Why do we not want to see? Why do we not want to have that feeling before a fight when our favorite fighter is walking to the ring? He's walking to the ring. It's his ring entrance. And we have that feeling in our gut like, man, this is scary. I don't know if my guy is going to win this one. I had that feeling, Cotto versus Margarito too. We got to get revenge here, but I don't know if Cotto can beat Margarito here. I don't know. This is a legacy fight. He's got to get past this one. I don't know if he can do it. I had that feeling in my gut. My fighter was at risk. My favorite fighter was at risk. And it's a great feeling as a boxing fan. It's a great feeling why would you not want to feel that? Why would you want to be on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, fighting mythical fights for your fighter because you don't want to see them put at risk and make excuses as to why they're not being put at risk? Why do we have a growing percentage of fight fans like this? Why? Why are they like that? Well, my guy can't take 35% because of this and that and that. He got married. He could have been fighting, but he got married. But he had to get married because of family, and 44 weeks of PTO wasn't enough. Okay. Shout out my guy, JC. To Matador. JC, what up, bro? Let's see what we got. D-Style Boxing. The Biz Planers. The Biz Planers. That's what it is. They want to explain the business to us. I want to talk about sports. I want to talk about the sport. I don't want to talk about business, or I'd be on the money channel. Like I'd have a money YouTube channel. I want to talk about the business. The Bizplainers, that's what they are. The Bizplainers. They explain away why their favorite fighter can't fight a certain fight. Explain it away, but it doesn't make sense. If it made sense, okay, but it doesn't make sense a lot of the times. I had that guy, what's his name? Checkmate Boxing on months ago. And I said, I'll just let him on for this time and just let him speak. And just let him speak and just let him speak. And he's explaining away why Tank can't fight this fight and that fight and that fight. And why Tank actually has a better resume than Lomachenko, because every single fighter, he went name by name, that Tank fought was actually underrated. And every single fighter that Lomachenko fight was actually overrated. Why would you want to bend yourself? Why would you want to do so much mental gymnastics just to protect your favorite fighter? It's not worth it. These guys don't know who you are. They don't know who you are. So what we do is we just get on here. We become fans of actions of fighters. We don't roll out of bed and just start saying, oh, I'm going to like Canelo today. Just going to like Canelo just because he looks like Richie Cunningham. Got a nice built-in fan base. It's not what we do. But when Eddie says he's going to work with Canelo 2023 and 2024, that's interesting to me. And what happens? Let's go back to 2022 real quick with Canelo. And by the way, y'all bang away that like button. Hit that like button for me real quick. If you do anything, hit that X and then hit the like button. And then once you hit that like button, you can come right back to the chat. Let's see. Al Haymon only interested in fees and not developing legitimate stars. Fumbled the Charlos, Benavidez, Andy Ruiz, Caleb Plant, Spence, etc. Every single fighter you just named should be a star by now. And they're not. All marketable guys. Benavidez, marketable guy. He just is. From Arizona, should have a Mexican built-in Mexican fan base, Mexican-American. Likeable guy, seems like. And on top of that, he's a fun fighter. He's fun. Pressure fighter, big, knocks guys out. Benavidez should be a star. Andy Ruiz should have been a star had you kept him. He's one of those guys too. Like, he didn't need the O. Andy Ruiz didn't need the O. Andy Ruiz could have just kept on going throughout his career, fought 2 times per year after the Anthony Joshua fight. You could have marketed him much better. Fought him in Mexico, fought him in Las Vegas, fought him in Los Angeles, kept him busy, but they didn't keep him busy. I don't care if Andy Ruiz wins or loses. He's fun. He's a fun fighter. Caleb Plant, another one. Like, this is where I got to start dancing around things in order to not. Caleb Plant's a white dude from Tennessee, middle America. And he's one of the only, there are 2 white American. There's 17 weight classes in boxing. 17. Not counting Bridgerweight. I know D-Style loves Bridgerweight, the kid that got eaten by the dogs. They named it after him. But and by the way, speaking of WBC naming a weight class after a kid, the WBC, their sanction on Russian fighters is disgusting. Can they please lift that stupid thing? There's no reason to be sanctioning Russian fighters. It's so stupid. Can we please not sanction Bivol better? Like, it's so stupid. Can you please stop, WBC? So stupid. But Caleb Plant is, there are 170, 17 times 10, 170 ranked fighters in boxing. 170. We take one ranking. And there are only 2 white Americans. 2 white Americans in the top 170. 2 ranked white American fighters. That's Caleb Plant and Joe Smith Jr. Right? And they didn't market these guys correctly to white America, obviously, because these guys aren't stars. Caleb Plant should be a star. He should. Errol Spence should be a star. Errol Spence, a likable guy, doing 30-something thousand in Dallas. Once again, got a nice fan base, and they can't make this guy a star because its part-time business model cannot develop stars. It can't. It can't do it. It can't do it. It can't do it. It can't do it. We talked about it a million times, and that brings me to Canelo. How many times has Canelo fought in the same time that Crawford and Spence have fought twice? So in other words, since December of 2020, Canelo has fought 6 times. Since December of 2020, I believe Crawford has fought twice. Spence has fought twice. Canelo is outpacing these guys. Canelo has a bigger base, and he's still running circles around these guys as far as activity. Bigger base than all of these guys. Take the top 10 pound-for-pound list. The top 10 fought a combined 14 times last year. Canelo was 2 of them. Canelo is outpacing these guys, and he's a bigger star. And people wonder why this guy is a star. I saw the confusing look on people's faces on their YouTube channels, and I saw the comments on Twitter last year when Canelo lost Bivol. They thought that Canelo, his fan base was going to start to decrease. They thought that was going to disconnect Canelo from some of his fan base. Oh, Canelo was exposed. He was exposed by a Euro bum. This isn't good for Canelo. Things are going to start to go downhill for Canelo. But what happened instead? The fan base stayed attached. 17 days later, let me tell you why the fan base stayed attached. Because Canelo stayed true to himself. Canelo, Trust Fund Eddie, Reynoso, they put out a plan last year. Each year, they put out a clear and concise plan as to this is our goals this year. This is what we want to accomplish. In 2021, it was undisputed. We're going to start this path in December 2020. We're going to fight. They wanted to fight 4 times in 2021. But dealing with PBC and the Caleb Plant, remember that fight was supposed to be in September. It was pushed back to November, fought 3 times. But that was their plan in 2021, an aggressive plan. We just fought in December 2020, but we're going to fight February, May, September, and December this year. Aggressive, old school. And at the same time, we want to become undisputed at 168. And that's when you started to see the narratives pop out. the anti-Canelo narratives. Well, Billy Joe Saunders is actually a Eurobum. Caleb Plant, he's not that good. He's a one-handed fighter. When Canelo was at 160, Billy Joe Saunders was all wrong for Canelo, according to the same people. Caleb Plant was slick. And now Caleb Plant's fighting David Benavidez, and it's a great fight. Great fight. Caleb Plant's a great fighter all of a sudden again. But when he was fighting Canelo, nah, white bum. Now he's white chocolate. Now he's white chocolate again. But they put out an aggressive plan each year. And it's like a book that you can follow each year. Clear and concise. This is what we want to accomplish this year. This is what we're going to go for. Undisputed, they accomplished it 2021. 2022, what happens? Bivol derails that plan. But what happens after that? The initial plan is Bivol May, Glock in September, possibly John Ryder in the UK in December. Bivol derails that plan. 17 days after he loses Dmitry Bivol, and he has an injury, we didn't know about it at the time, he announces, I'm going forward with my trilogy fight with Gennady Golovkin in September. Still went ahead with it. And in going ahead with it and keeping it moving, the fan base said, all right, let's just keep this thing moving. Canelo's going to continue to act like Canelo. He's going to give us the fights we want to see. And we're going to go out there and support him. He's still doing better pay-per-view buys than everybody else. Whatever the number was, 850, some say 1 million, whatever it was, still good pay-per-view buys. And the live gate was crazy. But he goes ahead with it. And then he announces after the fight, I got to take a break, injured shoulder. So what happens? The plan is still going. John Ryder fight is still on, but it's just 5 months delayed from the original plan. So you trust the Canelo team to execute a plan that they put out. And he announces after the fight with John Ryder in May that we're going to circle back to the Bivol rematch in September. And then they're already working on 2024. And the 2024 plans are possibly Benavidez versus Caleb Plant winner and possibly Berlanga. I don't really like the Berlanga fight for Canelo. I think it's too easy, but it's a possibility. But what I'm saying is 6 times this dude fought in the same span these other pound-for-pound fighters are fighting once or twice. Most of them twice, sometimes some 3 times. But he's outpacing these guys by double the amount. Doubly active, sometimes triply active. Triple the amount of fights of other pound-for-pound fighters. And at the same time, they're already ahead of schedule from these guys working on what's happening after that. He's an aggressive A-side who understands legacy, but he's also a generous B-side, wheeling and dealing. Yeah, we'll give Caleb Plant $10 million. Yeah, we'll go over there and work with Al for one fight. Let's go. Let's get it done. Let's just get to the table. Let's get in the ring. I am a fighter. We fight. Give me my $40 million guaranteed. Let's get in the ring. Make it happen. It's not the number of fans, it's the memories who do that. Let's keep it real. I remember I'd be shaking before a fight in the 80s. That's how it was. I'll watch Jojo Diaz anytime in spite of all the losses. Dude comes to fight anyone. That's what I'm talking about. Shout out to JC working and listening. That's what I'm saying. Like, you lose a fight, it's fine. It's fine. As long as you continue to behave like the guy we fell in love with as a fighter, we'll continue to support you as a fighter. Wins, losses, ups, downs. Canelo has had several downs in his career. Still here. I wasn't a Canelo fan in 2009, 2010. I wasn't. Over time, I became a Canelo fan. Actions. Don't fight Austin Trout. Don't fight Austin. I had the managers all over the place. He shouldn't fight Austin Trout. It's all wrong for him. Canelo's like, I'll fight Austin Trout. Put him in the ring. Let's go to Alamo Dome. Let's go. His own promoter, Oscar, he shouldn't be fighting Austin Trout. He shouldn't do it. He keeps begging me to fight Austin Trout. I got to give him Austin Trout. He beats Austin Trout. Mayweather's all wrong for him. You're too young. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. He fights Mayweather, loses. Guess what? The fan base is still there. It's a loss. Don't fight Erislandy Lara, especially after a Mayweather loss. That's still too early after the Mayweather. I got dudes telling me on roundtables, I don't like that fight for Jose Ramirez now because he's coming off of a loss 2 years ago. Two years ago. This is the fanaging we talk about. If your favorite fighter wants to test himself, let the dude test himself. Arturo Gotti was one of my favorite fighters. Do you think I liked Arturo Gotti going to fight Oscar De La Hoya at 147 in Vegas? When he could have been fighting the Thomas Domgards of the world for $2 million per fight and not losing fights, not getting damaged as a fighter. But he wanted to test himself. He thought he was pound for pound, and he wasn't. But he wanted to find out. Let him go find out. Who am I to say no? As a fan of Arturo Gotti, you think I'm going to say no? I knew he was going to lose the Mayweather fight. I knew that was going to be bloody. I still bought the pay-per-view. I still supported Arturo Gotti, and I still supported Arturo Gotti after the fight. He tested himself against the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. We all knew it was a horrible matchup. We all knew it was an awful matchup. He tested himself. But guess what? His base was still there after the fight. People were shocked by that, and people are still shocked by that. Canelo loses to Bivol, and he still sells out against Golovkin 3 months later. He still does a bunch of pay-per-view buys 3 to 4 months later. They're looking at us like aliens over here. Like, why would they still support a guy who loses? Why do you think? He's behaving like a fighter. He's not padding his record. He's not in bubble wrap. Why would you not want to watch? Why would you want to watch a sport that does not resemble a sport? Why would you not want to watch resistance? Why would you not want to watch guys going for greatness? That's how these guys get on posters. Even after getting knocked out, even after losing multiple fights, they get on posters because they behave like fighters. Nobody's going to be at a bar room 10 to 15 years from now talking about Tank versus Rolly. We talk about the great fights. We talk about the great fighters, and great fighters fighting great fights. They give us great moments, and they end up on posters, unframed posters. But people were shocked by that. De La Hoya or Arturo Gotti is destroyed by Floyd Mayweather, and then he fights, I think, 6 months later, and it's sold out. Place is still packed, place is still lively, place is still going crazy because he's Arturo Gotti. He tests himself, he'll lose, we'll go through the ups and downs. We're emotionally invested in the story. So with Canelo, why Canelo has gotten his base is because we're emotionally invested in his story. He had a nice built-in base at the beginning. Red-headed Mexican dude, got a nice Mexican base. Women will love him, dudes want to be him. But I've seen it. I've seen those fan bases detached in the past with certain fighters. Chavez Jr. had a nice built-in fan base. Who had a better built-in fan base than Chavez Jr.? His dad is a Mexican legend, but over time that fan base was detached because we're like, why do we want to watch a dude weight bully people or get exposed and behave the way he's behaving? And his dad's telling him to train, and he's training with pink Speedos on in the living room, pushing over the couch so he can do mids. He's not appreciating anything. He's not appreciating his fan base. So what happens? It's detached. People start to see this isn't organic. It's not real. But with Canelo, over 15 years, almost, he's been able to not only keep that base, but expand it because more people are realizing this is real. This is organic. He didn't have to fight Mayweather. He didn't have to fight Trout. He didn't have to fight Lara. He could have fought Matthew Hattons. WBC could have rolled out some belts for him. But he kept it going. He understood legacy over currency, gets him more of both over time. And he's built this base, and he continues to attempt to build his base further. That's the thing as well. If Canelo is not above going to the UK in May, who is above that? Why am I being told that Spence doesn't have to fight for the belts and he doesn't have to leave Dallas? It's crazy. These fighters don't have to leave America. Stephen Fulton Jr. doesn't have to go to Japan for that fight. Why not? Devin Haney doesn't have to go to Australia to fight Kambosos. Harrison doesn't have to go over there to fight Zoo. They don't have to do that. They kind of do. And Canelo isn't above it because Canelo understands that he can grow his legacy. He can grow his footprint in the world. He can grow his brand universally if he goes to the UK to fight. He's talking about going to Japan to fight, going back to Mexico to fight. Guys in the past have done this. Muhammad Ali fought in different countries. They all did. Fought in different countries. You got guys going to Saudi Arabia and fighting right now. Building a global brand. And Canelo understands this. He's not above it. He wants to build his brand. Go to the UK. Can you imagine? Just imagine the scene in the UK in May if he does this and goes fights John Ryder. John Ryder, who, by the way, they're going to tell you he's a bum. And I'm not saying John Ryder is the greatest fighter in the world, but John Ryder, according to Ring Magazine, is the number 3 contender behind Benavidez and Caleb Plant right now, ahead of Morrell Jr. Bad Left Hook also has him in the top 5. Just beat Zach Parker, the same Zach Parker who Boo Boo Andre avoided twice. And he's going to his soil to fight him. I'm not saying it's the greatest fight in the world. I'm not saying it's the best option. But if Bivol is in September, it's apples to oranges. A lot of other fighters, like I said, they don't have a long-term plan. They're fighting once or twice per year. So when you see an announcement like Spence versus Thurman at 154, you're like, what is this? What is this? But the reason you do that is we might not see Spence for another year after that. And we haven't seen Spence for 13 months before that. So we don't know what's happening with this story, and you're going to give me this? With Canelo, if it's not the fight that you want, the next fight, it could possibly be the fight you want 4 months after that. Yeah, I didn't really want Ryder in the next fight in May, but if Bivol's in September, sign me up. I'm fine with it. It's apples to oranges. You can't compare a fighter who's fought 6 times in since December 2020 to a fighter who's fought twice since December 2020. It's what makes the pound-for-pound list difficult to do. How do you compare and contrast the two? You have a guy who's being aggressive, staying active. The more you fight, the more risk you're putting yourself at. So these fighters who are fighting twice per year, or once per year, if you're going to fight once per year, you need to make it count. With Canelo, we're expecting 2 to 3 fights per year. We know we're going to get it. So if it's a John Ryder and we're not excited about it, we know 3 to 4 months after that, we're going to get the fight we want, or we're going to get a big fight. And that John Ryder fight is going to be a great environment. Great environment. He was eating Lucky Charms. And this is what I'm saying right here. It's like you have people going overboard with the John Ryder talk. That's what it is. I mean, I don't want to see no Bivol versus Canelo. I want to see Bivol versus Beterbiev. And I do too. I want to see Bivol versus Beterbiev. I'd rather see Bivol versus Beterbiev undisputed than the rematch. But guess what? When you're putting in so much work, more work than these other fighters, you can sit back and call the shots. When you're fighting 6 times in the same span these other fighters are fighting twice, and you're putting on the biggest events, and you're the cash cow of boxing, and you didn't just inherit the cash cow of boxing, you went out and earned it over years of putting in work and fighting in big fights and becoming the pound-for-pound king. If you're the pound-for-pound king and you fight Dimitri Bivol, and by the way, this is how you tell the unintelligent boxing fans, because I saw it. At the time. They wanted him to take the PBC deal, which was much easier than the Eddie Hearn deal. Errol Spence Jr. at 164. Errol Spence Jr. at 1. Jamal Charlo. who's fought once in the past 850 days, and Benavidez, who lost his belt on the scale. Had he kept this belt, he would have got the fight that Caleb Plant got and got $10 million in the process. They thought that deal was more difficult than fighting Dimitri Bivol. That did not age well. And they're not going to admit that it didn't age well. So if you take on that risk, you assume that risk, you go back to the front of the line if you lose that fight. The biggest money fight out there for Bivol is Canelo for Undisputed in September. By far. By far. And if you're Dimitri Bivol, you're looking at this and saying, I already beat the guy. I'll go down and take his belts at 168, become undisputed at 168. In the very next fight Beterbiev and become undisputed at 175. And oh, by the way, at the same time, there are other roadblocks in the way of Bivol versus Beterbiev because of boxing stupid politics that everybody tries to explain away to me on here all the time. WBC sanctioning Russian fighters. Bivol versus Beterbiev should have happened already. It should have happened already. I explained this on the last show. Bivol beats Canelo. Bigger than Bivol's ever been. He just beat the pound-for-pound king and he just beat the cash cow. Perfect time to segue into Undisputed if Beterbiev puts on a good performance against Joe Smith Jr. Send Bivol out to Madison Square Garden, have him sit ringside at Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr. Let these guys face off in the ring like Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. That's how you build a fight. Instead, what do? Bob Arum comes out and says, see that guy over there? His name is Yard. We're doing that fight next. And I'm sitting over here like, what? What are we doing? What are we doing here? Yard? Where did this come from? Yard. Bivol versus Beterbiev. This is the perfect time. Bivol just beat Canelo. Beterbiev just knocked out Joe Smith Jr. in a round and a half. Make the undisputed fight. No, we're going to do Yard. So I don't want to hear anything, man. Like, they could have made this fight already. So if Canelo's out there calling the shots, let him call the shots. Whatever he wants, give it to him. He's earned that. If he doesn't want to step out of the way for the rematch, more power to him. He has all the excuses in the world to step away from Bivol. And oh, by the way, for the people saying Canelo's weight draining Bivol, you obviously haven't been paying attention. Bivol is the one after the fight who mentioned fighting at 168 because he wanted, if he's going to fight Canelo in a rematch, he wants belts on the line. Other belts on the line other than his. If I fight him, let's do it at 168 for Undisputed. Let him put his belts on the line. And now Canelo's, of course, being accused of weight draining Bivol because that's all you guys do. Canelo can do no right to a lot of people. I had Dimitri Bivol winning 10 rounds. But guess what? He's fighting him again. He's fighting him again because after the fight, he said, it can't end this way. It can't end this way. We got to circle back to this. So that's what we got. But Canelo going to the UK to fight John Ryder will be a bigger fight than people think. Be a huge fight. And Canelo is willing to sacrifice a bigger live gate in Vegas, go out of his comfort zone to go fight that fight against the top 5 super middleweight. He knows he's going to be called by uneducated boxing fans a guy who's going after Euro bums. And he's risking putting all of his hardware on the line to fight a rematch that stylistically it doesn't benefit him. And we saw that last year. And this right here, no. Canelo calls the shots. Nobody's going to force Canelo into a fight. Canelo calls the shots. And he proved that in his golden boy days when Oscar told him, you're not fighting Austin Trout, and Canelo said, give me the fight. You're not fighting Floyd Mayweather, give me the fight. You're not fighting Arislandi Lara, give me the fight. Give me the fight, give me the fight, give me the fight. And we need more fighters taking control of their careers. We don't need more fighters saying, I need to let my advisor deal with it. I'm just going to fight whoever they put me in there with. No, more fighters taking control of their careers. And that's what we got. On that note, HCP back here tomorrow at noon. God bless. Peace.